In this video, we're going to look at the data science job role. So what we're really going to look at here is look at what exactly a data scientist does, right? What exactly do they do in a daily basis? What do they do as far as their job role? What does their job entail? What are the things that they're going to be doing essentially in this particular position? So let's go ahead and jump into the data science job role. So what exactly do data scientists do? A data scientist works with big data in order to derive valuable business insight from it. So very plain and simple definition here. The data scientist is really all about being able to look at information, the data, and be able to find out key trends, key insights that are going to be able to help that business grow or not lose money or make a purchase or whatever type of decision that data is surrounded around, right? It's going to help the business be able to ultimately increase their bottom line, right? And so that's what really the data scientist is doing, is being able to sift through all these different, types of data and being able to make sense of it so that it ultimately adds to the bottom line of the business. And then by extrapolating and sharing these insights, the data scientists help organizations to solve complex problems, right? So just like I was mentioning, it's about helping the businesses make these well-informed decisions, objective decisions, right? And where they're combining computer science, modeling, statistics, analytics, and math skills along with sound business sense, a data scientist is really uncovering the answers to major questions that help organizations make decisions, right? And so you're going to learn all of those in this particular course, right? You're going to learn modeling, statistics, analytics, various math skills, and obviously we are looking for you to have a basic foundational understanding of computer science, of the different forms of math, different understandings of computer science as a whole. And so most people that will take a type of course like this that has very much so to do with programming or analytics or data science, right, machine learning, typically those individuals are going to have a computer science background now all the time, and it's not necessarily something that is necessary for you to have. However, for the most part, like I said, people have that computer science background, and the math skills is also something that individuals typically have, but no problem if you don't have that as a background. And then businesses use data scientists to source, manage, and analyze large amounts of unstructured data. And so the results are then synthesized and communicated to key stakeholders to drive strategic decision making in the organization. So ultimately, just like I mentioned, the businesses are hiring these individual data scientists to be able to sift through all these different types of data that is unstructured, and they're wanting to make it so that it's structured in a way where the actual owners, the stakeholders, can make sense of the data, right? They can see it in real time and be able to come to a conclusion as to what decision they shouldn't make and whether or not it's going to benefit the organization, right? And so some of the common data science job roles we have here is obviously the data scientist, right? Where they design data modeling processes to create algorithms and predictive models to perform custom analysis. The data analyst, which is where the individual is working with manipulating large data sets and using them to identify trends and reach meaningful conclusions to inform strategic business decisions. Now, here's the thing. Data scientists typically work in larger organizations and where they have that position. Now, oftentimes in like the small to medium size or even the medium size to upper larger organizations are still going to have somebody who is quote unquote a data scientist and is doing a lot of these different things. So the data scientist may be doing the work of the data analyst as well. So that's just something to keep in mind there, that oftentimes a lot of these roles will be overlapping each other. And then data engineers are the ones that clean, aggregate, and organize data from sources and transfer it to the data warehouses. And then the BI specialists, where these guys are really the ones that are working with like Tableau to be able to create these beautiful, nice looking presentations that really give insight into how the business is actually working, the different trends, and be able to make sense for the stakeholders, right? Because the owners, right, the executives in an organization don't really have the understanding or knowledge of data science and all these different technical terms and, knowledge and experience. So they really rely on the data scientists and BI specialists and whatnot to be able to present the data in such a way that it's easily able to be digested by a non-technical individual, right? So that's what's really important there, is being able to take this information and present it in a way that's very easily going to be digested and understood by someone who has no technical background, right, or experience. So the data architects are the ones that design, create, and manage an organization's data structure. These individuals are typically working in like SQL, where they have several different, architectures put together for various data sets, right? And one of the differences here with the data scientist and data analyst, and oftentimes, like I said, these positions are going to overlap, but the data scientists develop processes for modeling data, while the data analyst examines data sets to identify trends and draw conclusions. So those are going to be the differences between the data scientist and the data analyst. Like I mentioned, a lot of times in the medium-sized organizations, a lot of these positions are going to overlap. And you can even have somebody where they're a data scientist and they are responsible for all of these different areas, okay? And you won't see this typically in larger organizations, Fortune 500 companies. They're going to have each individual specifically for this particular, job role here. Let's take a look at some of the skills that you're going to need. So some of the skills that you're going to need here is the statistical analysis. This is where you're identifying patterns in data. This includes having a keen sense of pattern detection and anomaly detection. So you're looking for trends, you're looking for insights, you're looking for, different things that are unusual, right, to a particular set of data, right? If you see a flat line and then you see a sudden jump or a sudden dip, right, you want to be able to make sense of that and acknowledge that, right? Because that is what the statistical analysis is really all about. And you're going to learn all of these different types of skills in this particular course, right? So that's why it's important for you to go through the entire course so that you can get the required skills that you need and that employers are looking for. And so you're going to learn also, obviously, machine learning, where you're going to implement algorithms and statistical models to enable a computer to automatically learn from data, right? This is where you're programming a particular, machine to do, certain things based off of what you're looking to accomplish, right? And then computer science, this is where you're going to apply the principles of artificial intelligence, database systems, human-computer interaction, right? All of these different things. And like I mentioned previously in one of the other videos, you want to have a foundational understanding of computer science. And that's where a lot of people, where they are coming from, let's say college, or they have a 4-year degree, 2-year degree, and they have a basic understanding of technology. However, computer science, if you have that background, if you have a degree in that field, then this is really going to benefit you extremely, a whole lot, compared to somebody who doesn't have that computer science background. So very much so important there to understand. And then programming, right? This is where you're going to write different computer programs, analyze large data sets to uncover answers to complex problems. And programming is very simple. Just think about Python. Just think about, the R programming language, right? You're programming things to do certain things based on what you're looking to accomplish, right? You got certain inputs, you got certain outputs, and based on what you're looking to accomplish, you're going to put in certain inputs there to the programming language, and based on what you're looking to accomplish, you're going to get a certain set of outputs if you're doing it right, because sometimes you can obviously have problems here. But programming, very, very simple. And then you're going to obviously learn that in this course. And then data storytelling, communicate actionable insights using data, often for non-technical audience. So this is what I mentioned as far as for the data scientists, being able to explain information, concepts, ideas, and not only that, but also be able to have a presentation that showcases what information was uncovered and gathered, so that the individual with non-technical experience, right, an executive, a CEO, an owner, right, maybe somebody who is the manager or the director in a certain, field, or in a certain, particular area. Those individuals that are not very technical, right, but are experts in different areas, want to be able to make sense of that data. And being able to have data storytelling as a skill is going to be extremely valuable. So you're going to learn all of that in this course. And so that's going to be here for this one, and we'll see you on the next one.